I have here a letter from a Mississippi mother to a Mississippi son. I thought this was pretty good. Dear son, I'm writing this slow because I know you can't read fast. We don't live where we did when you left. Your dad read in the paper where most accidents happened within 20 miles of home, so we moved. I won't be able to send you the address because the last family that lived here took the numbers with them for their next house so they wouldn't have to change their address. This place has a washing machine. The first day I put 4 shirts in it, pulled the chain, and haven't seen them since. It only rained twice this week, 3 days the first time and 4 days the second. The coat you wanted me to send you, well, your Aunt Sue said it would be a little too heavy to send in the mail with them heavy buttons. So we cut them off and put them in the pockets. We got a bill from the funeral home. Said if we didn't make the last payment on Grandma's funeral bill, up she comes. About your father. He has a lovely new job. He has over 500 men under him. He's cutting grass at the cemetery. About your sister, she had a baby this morning. I haven't found out whether it is a boy or a girl, so I don't know if you're an aunt or an uncle. 3 friends went off the bridge in a pickup. One was driving and the other 2 were in the back. The driver got out. He rolled down the window and swam to safety. The other 2 drowned. They couldn't get the tailgate down. Your Uncle John fell in the whiskey vat. Some men tried to pull him out, but he fought them off, so he drowned. We cremated him. He burned for 3 days. Not much new this time. Nothing much happened. Write more often. Love, Mom. Actually, I told you it was a letter from a Mississippi mom to a Mississippi son. It's actually the actual, it says a letter from a Tennessee mom to a Tennessee son. You can use it a bunch of different places, I guess. I got that in Kentucky, and, so people in Kentucky like to make fun of people in Tennessee, call them hillbillies, and, of course, vice versa as well. It goes back and forth. But I use Mississippi for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is you'll buy it. Why? Because you know that people in Mississippi are backwards. Right? I mean, if I would have used California, probably wouldn't have worked as well. Even Pennsylvania, would that have worked? Probably not so well. But Mississippi, because we have judged the people of Mississippi, and we know them, right? Right? What about judging? We make judgments all the time, and yet God tells us, do not judge. He says, do not judge. Matthew chapter 7 is about not judging, the first 6 verses, and I want to read to you actually that 6th verse. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. Don't give what is sacred. Don't give what is holy to people who won't appreciate them. They're dogs and they're pigs. Jesus calls them. But how are we supposed to know who the dogs and the pigs are? Right? How are we supposed to know that? I mean, without judging them. You see, maybe we do need to judge. Actually, we do judge all the time. So how can we judge without being judgmental? That's going to be the key. And the first thing I want to say is this. We need to distinguish between one's actions, what one does, and who they are. We need to distinguish between what one does and who they are. You see, their actions we can judge. certainly we can look at them and say, well, does that agree or disagree with the Bible? If it agrees or disagrees with the Bible, then we know their actions are wrong. And yet, I'm not sure we can still judge them. I'm not sure we can really devalue or should devalue them. Somehow say, oh, they're lower than us. They're not as good as us. They're not worthy of my time or my attention. Because when we do that, we start to cross over a line. You see, the ultimate judge of our souls is God. God is the ultimate judge of our souls. He's the one who gets to do that, right? And as we start to do that and judge other people and devalue them and all of that, then we start to take the place of God. That's God's prerogative. That's not our prerogative. If you start to take the place of God, then you have to be careful, because God's going to judge you by that standard as well. So we need to differentiate between one's actions that can be judged and the person themselves. So there's two things we need to know about all this judging. The first one is this: we need to know what we don't know. We need to know what we don't know. What I mean, we don't know a person's heart. We don't know a person's motivation. We can't judge those things because we don't know. We don't see those things. A person's sort of like an iceberg. You just see the tip of the iceberg sticking up out of the water, right? But the whole rest of that person, you can't see. You can't see. So we have to be careful about judging, because we don't know their hearts or their motivations. I remember when I was a pastor in Houtsdale, Clearfield County, and it was sort of neat how it was set up in one sense. We had a rails to trails that ran from right behind our house all the way to Houtsdale. It was like 3 miles away. And so there were times I would ride my bike into the office, especially like on a Saturday morning, and then ride it back, the 3 miles there, the 3 miles back. I think I was coming back one day, and at a point where the rails to trails came very close to the road, I saw something on the rails to trail. It was a bottle. And I stopped and I picked it up, and I'm like, what kind of bottle is this? And I sort of hold it up to look at it, and just then a car went by. You know what I'm thinking? I hope that's not a church member. See me holding this beer bottle up. Because they could get the totally wrong impression. Because that's not what was going on at all. So we need to know what we do not know. So here's the second thing that we need to know. We need to know our own heart. We need to know our own heart. You see, God does want us to make a judgment from His Word, right, about people's actions. In verse 5, He talks to us about removing the speck from your brother's eye. So it's not like God doesn't want us to do that. He says right here to remove the speck from your brother's eye. But the first thing we have to do before we even begin to think about doing that is we have to look at ourselves. We have to examine ourselves. We need to know ourselves. Okay? Because you never know. You may have a log in your eyes, right? You might have a log in your eyes that you don't even know about. So examine yourselves. How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank or log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. we need to first look at ourselves and take the log out of our eyes. So this is hard. I actually got a fortune and a fortune cookie that was actually right on this point. Let me read you this fortune from a fortune cookie. Your lucky numbers are 4, 8, 9, 10. No, that's not the right part. Wait a minute. It is more difficult to judge oneself than to judge others. Isn't that true? It is more difficult to judge ourselves than it is to judge others. So we need to keep that in mind. We need to keep that certainly in mind. So we need to judge ourselves. Then we can correct. Then we can correct the other person. And when we've judged ourselves, we are ready to do that as a fellow sinner, right? We're ready to do that as a fellow sinner, not by looking down on somebody, because we know ourselves and the bad that's in us, and we're ready to do that as a fellow sinner. Just one traveler helping another traveler on the way. Just one, traveler warning another where the potholes are, right? I mean, when if you remember, quite a few years ago now, I think they got it fixed. But if you're traveling I-81 North from Maryland into Pennsylvania, right at the border, there's that bridge with the sign there on 81 North, and there was always a giant pothole there. I mean, you could be a passenger, just traveling, reading a book or something, boom, and you say, oh, guess we're back in Pennsylvania, because there was that big pothole there. But if you warn somebody and you say, wait, when you get to the Pennsylvania line, if you can, get in the other lane, because there's always a pothole in the right-hand lane. And, and that's what we are. We're one traveler helping another one traveler find out where the potholes are in their life. That's what it is. And that's what we're to be about. So I have some questions for us to think about and to ponder. And they're on the outline as well. Here's some questions. Do you want to be judged by the same standard you judge others? Because that's what God's going to do. If you're a really harsh judge of others, God's going to judge you harshly as well. Do you want to get jumped on for every mistake you make? Do you want to get jumped on for every mistake you make? All right? Well, then maybe we should be a little slower to jump on other people when they make mistakes, if we don't want to be jumped on for every mistake we make. Do you want people gossiping about you? Do you want people gossiping about you? Then don't gossip about them. Remember we did our study on homosexuality a couple weeks ago, and we were Romans chapter 1. Of course, it had those verses about homosexuality, but it also, after that, had a whole list of other things. And in Romans 1:29, it mentions gossip. It mentions gossip. We're not supposed to be gossips. And certainly we don't want others to gossip about us as well. I began by talking about Mississippi, a letter from a Mississippi mother to a Mississippi son. And I've been to Mississippi. I've been to the capital of Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. Guess what? It's a modern city like any other city is. People in Mississippi are good. They're not backwards. Okay, they do sort of talk funny, but they're not backwards. They're some of the best people in the world. So may we keep that in mind. May we keep that in mind when we start thinking about judging, when somebody makes a mistake. You know, when somebody cuts you off in traffic, okay, but we don't need to curse at them. If a waitress makes a mistake, we don't need to yell at her. You know, we don't need to do that. Jesus, do not judge, for you will be judged in the same way that you judge others. So I'm sorry I'm not there, but God bless you all, and I wish you all the very best this week.